How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, I'm working on another book, and the other book is going to be about things we need to know at the beginning of our career that will make it a meaningful and purposeful career. And like my other books I've written, I always try to get participation from other people that work in this profession. For this book, the participation is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to kind of set up the context, and then they will go ahead and submit a very personal story. And I hope the story connects the individual reading it to the context of what the lesson is. And that's the key. And what I'm going to do right now is read to you a brief section of the new book that we probably won't see in the market till mid next year, or maybe towards the end, because I still got to collect the stories. But I want to read it out to you guys so you kind of know what type of book is coming your way. But also, as I was writing this, I discovered a lot, and I feel it's very good information to get out there. And I'm not going to share the latter part of this chapter because that's going to be William Young's story. He's the one that's going to connect to the context of what's written, because William Young is an advocate for our mental health. It's something that he fights for. He's has his own YouTube channel called Just Corrections, and he fits into this chapter perfectly. So what's going to happen, guys, when you get this book, you're going to notice that there's going to be a context, and then there's going to be a story that's shared that will relate to the context, and that will complete each chapter. Each chapter will be about 3,000 words. So you're looking at a 30,000 word book. But the first chapter, and guys, if you're new to this profession, this is going to be great advice, so please listen, because this is probably the only time I'm going to read an excerpt from the book at this point. I just want to get it out there early because there's some good advice here, and I just am very, very anxious to share it. So the first chapter is going to be about know who you are and connect that with who you want to be. And at the very beginning, you'll see a quote from Aristotle that says, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And again, that's from Aristotle. So how the book is going to begin, it's going to pretty much go, needless to say, working in a prison or a jail can be quite challenging. For some correctional staff, they will step up and rise to the occasion. They will find ways to face each challenge and embrace it as an opportunity. And that opportunity is for growth and development. As German poet Johann Wolfgang von Goethe stated, plunge boldly into the thick of life and seize it where you will. It is always interesting. Sadly, for many others, they will fall victim to the times and be forever defined by their inability to adapt and adjust. As a social media influencer, so YouTube and Facebook, within the realms of corrections, I receive tons of questions from career seekers about what should they expect when working in a prison or jail. Very rarely do I get any questions that relate to what the prison or jail should expect of them. What type of qualities make for a good officer? How can my skill, my expertise be better applied to this prison or jail? If chosen for the job, how can I add value to this agency? In my 20 years as a corrections professional, so from officer to admin, kind of a little shout out to the book, I have come to the realization that there must be a very fine balance between the expectations of the agency and the expectations for ourselves. It's a balance that coexists between what we expect from the profession and, more importantly, what the profession expects from us. Finding that needed balance is never easy. William Young, influencer and advocate for the corrections profession, believes it's about acknowledging the realities and restrictions of the working environment. Now, his quote is, staff can still reach their potential, realize their purpose, even within the framework of the mission vision statement. In essence, connecting to that framework, that mission vision, and aligning oneself to the greater picture, the higher picture, is the needed balance that is further defined by the value one can have as filtered through the expectations and demands of the department or agency. That is why it becomes essential for staff to understand themselves and build a connection that brings personal and professional value to the work being done. It's a shared partnership that allows staff to find value by looking inwards and building a bridge from oneself to their department or agency. Now, did you notice that I mentioned shared partnership? Russ Hamilton, retired sergeant from the CDCR, California Department of Corrections, sometimes my co-host, he believes the agency has an equal part in developing and cultivating the personal growth of their staff. So now Russ Hamilton's quote says, if not, those expectations are merely there for the benefit of management as a tool of deflection to shirk responsibility rather than to embrace it. And now I stand in absolute and perfect agreement with that, with Mr. Hamilton. The agency, the department has a responsibility to those in their employment. They have the responsibility to create a mission vision that has the ability and power to not just connect, but through strong leadership, cultivate their workforce towards a meaningful and purposeful career. Corrections is a career that is strengthened through constant effort and hard work. It's definitely not a passive career. It's an intentional career. It's a career that constantly seeks alignment and connection between one's purpose and the agency's goals. Regardless what some people may think, corrections does not at any point allow for one to simply apply minimal effort and just coast towards something meaningful and successful. It takes intentional effort from both parties, the agency and the staff member, to develop purposeful work in such a unique and not so appealing environment, prison or the jail. In 2002, I entered the corrections profession as a correctional officer. At the time, there was very little resources available that detailed the work of a correctional officer. Therefore, with little to no resources, I entered this profession with very limited actual knowledge. My motivation at the time was purely external. It was just a job that paid decent and had great benefits. Now, during my first few weeks, I came to realize how difficult this job could be. The working environment was very unpredictable at best. I mean, disrespect, fights, assaults, suicides, mandated overtime, etc. It could go from calm to chaotic in a matter of seconds. It was this repeated pattern of ups and downs that truly added anxiety to the workday. The stress of the moment, partnered with the anxiety of the unknown, can make for a very mentally and physically unhealthy work environment. Basically, your mind and heart can never fully rest and recuperate. After the first couple of weeks, I remembered asking myself, is this all worth it? The stress, the anxiety, is this all actually worth it? Worth what, you may ask? Worth just the salary and the benefits. Again, I had no defined purpose, no why, and during the tough times, my external motivation simply couldn't keep up with the fuel I needed to replace the energy I was rapidly expending. It just didn't balance out. I guess at the beginning of my career, I was very blessed to realize one key ingredient that leads to happiness at work: purpose. A defined purpose can change any meaningful job into a purposeful career. Within those first few weeks, I realized how quickly external incentives, pay, and benefits lose their energy to motivate. For a very brief moment, I felt trapped. Money, benefits, none of it held any weight against the overwhelming stress, the pressure, and the anxiety of the unknown of just working in a prison. And let me add a side note about feeling trapped. If you feel trapped in your profession, you begin to be overwhelmed with feelings of being forced to work. Your profession no longer becomes a profession of choice, but rather a meaningless job you have been forced to settle into. Usually it feels forced because the external incentives, pay, benefits are just enough to trap you into staying. A person who is solely defined by external incentives will see any success, promotions, as a tighter trap because more pay makes their attempt to step outwards a greater risk. On another note, we also become jealous of the success of others, especially if that success takes them out of the profession. Instead of us feeling happy for them or, as we should, we become overwhelmed with emotions of anger and jealousy. Deep down inside, we want to be happy for them. But because we feel trapped and they have managed to break free, our jealousy, our anger kills any attempt from us to share in the joy of their well-deserved success. Basically, this is not a healthy way to have a career. So how do I lift myself up from feeling trapped? How do I navigate away from a job and bring myself closer to a purpose-driven career? One word: connection. Pay attention, because this one word, if passionately applied, is life-changing. Cassandra Brene Brown, known author, said it best. Connection is why we are here. It is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives. The word connection is the one word that will begin to transition someone who is passive about their job to someone who is intentional about their career. This is the first step that allows for the balance, the shared partnership, the beautiful dance to exist. It's when the staff member begins the process of looking inwards, connecting to their core values, and then using that connection and their intentional effort to build a bridge towards the expectations of the agency or department. Ultimately, this effort freed me from the feeling of being trapped and opened a door to the wonderful feeling of choice. Simon Sinek, known author and motivational speaker, stated in an interview, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. By connecting to the work, by finding meaning and purpose, I would discover my passion. Looking backwards and seeing my past self through today's experienced eyes, my connection, my passion has always been towards a greater service to others. And let's be honest, that greater service to others, even though it can be quite challenging, is exactly what corrections is all about. From inmate to staff to volunteers to all lives that enter and leave that facility, our job, our defined purpose, our meaning is and will always be our service and value to each other. For me, I was lucky enough to discover the importance of connecting to the corrections profession and finding purpose early in my career. I say lucky because most never do. Most staff, driven by external incentives, seek to find happiness at their job, what they do, when they should focus more on being fulfilled by a meaningful and purposeful career. And that usually is defined by why they do it. And at that point, William Young will tell his story and how that relates to the context. And it's a beautiful story about how he found his calling. But this book will be released sometime later in next year, 2023. And I hope you guys pick it up, because this is me laying out a legacy and trying to create an impact that matters. And the biggest compliment I could ever get is when someone takes the information I provide and utilizes it in the way it was meant to be utilized. That's how we get knowledge. It's through applied wisdom. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's good. Notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.